Belarus has stepped into the global spotlight once again, sending ripples across the tense geopolitical landscape of Eastern Europe. In a move that many analysts are calling both surprising and dangerous, Minsk has issued a warning to Moscow that hints at a new decision possibly favoring Ukraine. The timing, the tone, and the implications of this warning all point to an emerging shift in the balance of power that could reshape the war and the alliances surrounding it. This is not just another statement lost in the noise of war updates. It is a story of survival, political maneuvering, and potential betrayal between two longtime allies. Hello everyone, welcome back to the World Conflict Monitor channel, and before we dive deep into this critical update, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay with us as we break down the exterior, the interior, the performance, the safety features, the unique selling points, the price, and finally the conclusion of Belarus's dramatic warning to Russia. The story begins with Belarus under President Alexander Lukashenko, long considered one of Moscow's most reliable allies. For years, Belarus has served as Russia's closest partner in both military and political terms. During the invasion of Ukraine, Minsk allowed Russian forces to use its territory as a launchpad for assaults on Kyiv in northern Ukraine. Yet despite this apparent loyalty, Lukashenko has always played a dangerous balancing act. He has relied on Russian support for his regime's survival, especially after mass protests in 2020, but he has also tried to avoid full entanglement in the war. Now, with Belarus warning Russia and signaling a decision that could be seen as leaning toward Ukraine, that balancing act has reached a breaking point. From the exterior view, Belarus appears to be an ally tightly bound to Moscow, yet cracks in this facade are becoming visible. Externally, Belarus has projected itself as part of the so-called Union State with Russia, participating in joint exercises, economic integration, and coordinated policies. But the external appearance often hides the growing internal tensions. The sanctions imposed on both Belarus and Russia have devastated Belarus's already fragile economy. Its international isolation has deepened, and Lukashenko knows that complete dependence on Russia leaves his country vulnerable. By issuing a warning to Russia now, Belarus is signaling that it wants to reshape its exterior image, not as a silent satellite state, but as a sovereign actor capable of making decisions that could favor Ukraine, or at least keep Minsk from being dragged further into Putin's war. Turning to the interior, the internal dynamics of Belarus are far more complicated and fragile than they may appear. Inside the country, the population is deeply divided. Many Belarusians oppose the war in Ukraine and resent their government's role in facilitating Russian aggression. Underground resistance movements have sabotaged railway lines to disrupt Russian logistics, and thousands of Belarusians have fled to Ukraine or the West rather than support Moscow's invasion. Lukashenko himself faces internal challenges, a weakening economy, declining public trust, and the ever-present fear of unrest. This short but crucial interior view reveals why he might now seek to distance himself from Moscow's war plans. Any move that signals independence, even if symbolic, could help Lukashenko stabilize his domestic position by showing his people that Belarus is not simply Russia's puppet. When we examine performance, Belarus's role in the war effort becomes clearer. From a performance standpoint, Minsk has contributed strategically important territory for Russia's operations but has stopped short of sending its own troops into Ukraine. This has been a calculated performance, enough to appease Moscow, but not so much as to provoke a direct backlash from NATO or the Belarusian population. However, the performance of Belarus as a loyal ally has been under strain. Russia expected more concrete support, possibly direct military intervention. By warning Russia and signaling a shift, Belarus is altering its performance on the international stage. It wants to appear as a state with agency, capable of recalibrating its role. This performance may not win over all critics, but it shows Minsk's desire to be seen as more than a background player in Moscow's war. Safety features in this geopolitical drama take on a very different meaning. For Belarus, safety is about survival, both of the regime and of the nation. The war in Ukraine has demonstrated the immense risks of aligning too closely with Russia. Safety features that Lukashenko is now trying to activate include maintaining distance from direct combat, opening small channels of communication with Ukraine, and signaling to the West that Belarus might not be completely lost to Moscow's orbit. These safety features are fragile, like a thin layer of armor, but they are crucial. By warning Russia, Minsk is essentially deploying a safety mechanism, a way of telling Moscow that pushing Belarus further into the war could destabilize the regime itself. For Lukashenko, preserving safety is about maintaining power at home while avoiding complete dependence on Moscow abroad. Looking at unique selling points, Belarus's geopolitical position is its greatest leverage. Its location between Russia, Ukraine, Poland, and the Baltic states makes it a strategic crossroads in Eastern Europe. This geography is Belarus's unique selling point. It gives Minsk leverage over Moscow, Kyiv, and even NATO. By issuing a warning to Russia and hinting at decisions that could favor Ukraine, Belarus is reminding the world of its importance. No major power can ignore Belarus because its territory is vital for military logistics, security calculations, and regional stability. Lukashenko is using this unique selling point as bargaining power. He can signal independence to the West, reassure his people at home, and still remind Moscow that Belarus cannot be taken for granted. When we consider the price, it becomes clear that every move Belarus makes comes with enormous costs. The price of aligning with Russia has been isolation, sanctions, and economic decline. The price of leaning toward Ukraine or the West could be retaliation from Moscow, which has troops and weapons stationed in Belarus and could destabilize the regime. Lukashenko knows this. The warning to Russia is not a free gesture, it risks angering Putin at a time when the Kremlin is desperate for allies. But Lukashenko also calculates that the price of staying fully tied to Moscow might be even greater, especially if Russia continues to weaken under the pressure of war. The price of independence may be high, but the price of submission could be catastrophic for Belarus's long-term survival. Finally, in conclusion, Belarus's warning to Russia and its suggestion of a possible decision in favor of Ukraine is more than just rhetoric. It represents a shift in the delicate balance that Lukashenko has tried to maintain. On the surface, Belarus remains Moscow's ally. Inside, however, domestic pressures, economic hardship, and resistance movements are pushing Lukashenko toward a more cautious stance. In terms of performance, Belarus has played its role carefully, giving Moscow access but withholding troops. Safety features are now being activated, with Minsk seeking to avoid direct entanglement. The unique selling point of geography continues to give Belarus leverage, while the price of every decision weighs heavily on Lukashenko's regime. The conclusion is clear: Belarus is no longer a silent partner in Russia's war. It is signaling independence, testing Moscow's patience, and hinting at a future where even Russia's closest allies might decide that siding with Ukraine, or at least avoiding war, is the safer bet. This story matters because it shows how fragile alliances can be in times of war. Belarus's warning to Russia could be the first sign of a broader unraveling of Moscow's influence in its neighborhood. If Belarus can push back, even cautiously, it could inspire other allies to reconsider their positions. For Ukraine, even symbolic support from Belarus would be a significant moral victory. For Russia, it would be a dangerous sign of weakening control. And for the world, it is a reminder that nothing in this conflict is fixed. The story of Belarus's warning to Russia is a story of survival, strategy, and shifting loyalties, one that could change the course of the war in unexpected ways.